Just taking your time settling into your body like we often do. And that might mean making adjustments of a cushion beneath you, making sure you have the right amount of support. And really, before you make the decision, okay, this is how I'm going to sit, you can check in and see, what does my body need? So many times we go into our rituals and habits, which are so helpful. Our brain really enjoys rhythm, ritual, consistency, but also just checking in. Okay, I'm here, I'm seated, or I'm reclined, whatever posture you've chosen. Take a few moments here just to ask your body, is there anything you need right now? Glass of water, a blanket, something for comfort. And as you're settling, just remembering you can ask yourself that at any time. And rather than our mind oftentimes wants to choose the right or the wrong, our body is telling us moment to moment what's going to feel good right now. And it's not always about feeling good, it's also about sticking with ourselves when we're feeling some difficulty, whether that's physical, just some small discomfort, we're feeling some emotional pain in our body. But we're setting ourselves up for success. So looking for some comfort, some ease as we start to practice. You're welcome at any point to either close your eyes or set your gaze downward. Just going slow to notice the movement of your breath, perhaps still making adjustments in your body, or purposeful movement like a neck roll or stretching of your shoulders or wrists and hands. Really taking some slow time to listen to your body. This practice of listening to your body, it's a little bit different than listening to the sounds around you, although that can be helpful. You might be hearing bird songs in your space or bird songs from my space coming your direction. You might be hearing people sounds, the sound of your own breath. And that layering of sounds, that's normally how we experience listening. The listening to your body is a little different. There's a feeling tone to it. Sometimes that feeling tone is influenced by our mind. So our mind is immediately saying, I like this, I don't like this. And there's a little bit of judgment. It's not a bad thing. But that listening to your body, you're listening to sensation. So our body is speaking to us in sensation and movement. And when we slow down and we're still enough, and that movement has started to just become the heartbeat itself, you start to build an intimacy with the listening to your body when you're just noticing your own heartbeat. And we can titrate back and forth. Oh, that's a bird. Oh, that's a truck. Oh, that's a human sound. And then back in. So, what is the sound of my breath? What is the feeling of my breath? So listening and feeling into that sensation of movement and stillness. It's taking some time there. As we continue to slow down, s- being with our body, being with our breath, but also invariably working with our mind. Sometimes just noting, oh, there's thinking mind. Just like we would note, oh, there's sensation, oh, there's a bird song. Then we can notice our thinking has taken us somewhere else other than the present. Suddenly we're present again. Noticing, just bringing ourselves back to the present again and again. Just naming again those external sounds and the internal feeling listening. Noticing the both and. Something like listening to a bird song. Science tells us that's soothing to our nervous system because birds don't sing when there are predators around, and our bodies know that. We don't consciously think that, like, oh, there's a bird, that means I'm calm now. But our bodies know. And that's that body wisdom that we're practicing listening to. My body knows that when a bird is singing near me, there's nothing harming that bird. And that soothes my nervous system. And there's an innate connection there. My mind didn't need to know what was happening for my body to feel soothed. The opposite can be true too. Our body can be telling us something is not quite right. We feel a tension, we feel a tightening, we feel a heat in our chest. And can we stay with that as well? Just practicing being with ourselves no matter what's coming up, allowing a bird song to soothe us for just a half a second. But your own breath can do the same thing. So noticing that balance of letting external sounds come to you, but also turning your attention inward, listening to your body, feeling into your body. Just notice the movement of breath, perhaps even more subtly, the still space between breath. As we stay, just noticing that communication is always happening. Just listening is communication. So oftentimes we think of speech as communication, but it involves listening. There's nonverbal communication, and there's things that are even unconscious, the way that our nervous systems talk to each other. We've all likely been in a situation where somebody walked into a room and suddenly the energy was brighter, or somebody walked into the room and suddenly the energy was sucked out of the room. We have those experiences and they're almost unnameable. And because our brain wants to name everything in words, it's really important to slow down and listen to our body's wisdom. So our body feels that energetic exchange at a level that we don't cognitively understand. So spending this time with yourself, developing your own understanding of what is your body telling you, not only helps us more effectively communicate with each other, but it helps us continue this never-ending communication with the nature around us. Sometimes we get so caught up in our humanness, we forget that we just are nature. Our body is speaking to this bird in a way that our brain can't understand. Just listening and then turning that listening inward and starting to lean your listening into feeling. Just feeling your body take this next breath. Just checking in, just practicing being with your body, deeply listening to your body beyond words and into sensation. Sometimes our body tells us something isn't quite right by a small tingle somewhere in our body. And that can be easily missed when our mind is busy. Our body can tell us we're experiencing some joy of seeing a flower or a loved one's face by some warmth that settles in somewhere. Just building our relationship with that type of communication, starting to awaken ourselves to that deep listening. And I have a personal theory or philosophy that I work with in my own life. It's this idea that the only thing we can control is what we consume and how we can communicate. And only to a degree, not control like power over, only to a degree. I'm not just talking about what we consume as food, fuel for our body. Consuming, what are we reading? What are we listening to? What types of relationships are we in? And we can't control everything. If we drive to work, invariably we're getting a barrage of information that are being consumed by our body, our senses, some billboard that we didn't even know we saw, and suddenly we want pizza because a Domino's billboard was in the background somewhere. But this conscious awareness gives us the ability to start to decide then, what am I going to do with what I've consumed? Am I consuming things that are upticking my anxiety? Am I consuming things that are soothing to me? Communication piece as well. So even though we're here, perhaps communing with the birds, communicating with our own body, there's also that inner dialogue. What is your mind telling you? Sometimes we can get caught in old stories. I always, I never. Sometimes we're sitting here blaming everybody else always, nobody else ever. Just noticing what your mind is doing. The consumption and the communication really go hand in hand. It's that working with your mind, just this curious awareness. What is my mind doing? How am I communicating with myself? Would I speak to anybody else in this voice? It's a helpful way to start to create a little friendliness with yourself. So can I speak to myself like I would a loved one? Can I allow my body to be spoken to like the birds speak to me? Just a deep curiosity and noticing when judgment comes in, tending to yourself moment by moment. So noticing, how am I speaking to myself? How am I hearing myself? What type of wisdom is my body sharing with me that I can listen to? I still have plenty of time to sit and stay. So oftentimes I share a reading towards the end. I'm going to share a reading by Thich Nhat Hanh. Just give us an opportunity to sit with it. Just notice what lands with us. That titration of being with and working with. Sometimes when we're working with our mind, when we're listening to something, our mind starts moving and trying to figure things out. Just taking a moment before we get into this listening to notice again your body. And you can come back again and again, just grounding into your body, stabilizing into that rhythmic, soothing support of your breath. This is actually a really important skill, to stay with our own body when we're listening to someone else, whether that means we're reading something or listening to a podcast or with somebody in person. It's being able to continue to listen to your own body's wisdom as you're listening externally. Just continuing to come back to your body again and again. Share these words from Thich Nhat Hanh. It's from his book, The Art of Communication. It's continuing that idea of communication, what we consume. He says, when we say something that nourishes us and uplifts the people around us, we are feeding love and compassion. When we speak and act in a way that causes tension and anger, we are nourishing violence and suffering. We often ingest toxic communication from those around us and from what we watch and read. Are we ingesting things that grow our understanding and compassion? If so, that is good food. So often, though, we ingest communication that makes us feel bad or insecure about ourselves, where we become judgmental and superior to others. It's important to notice what we're consuming. Just the internet is an item of consumption full of nutrients that are both healing and potentially toxic. It's easy to digest a lot in just a few minutes. This doesn't mean you shouldn't use the internet. Just be conscious of what you are reading and watching, what you are ingesting. The final passage here. He says, in a relationship, we are nourishment for each other. This means we have to select the kind of food we offer the other person, the kind of food that can help our relationships thrive. Everything, including love, but also hate and suffering, they need food to continue. If suffering continues, consider it's because we're feeding our suffering. And I don't leave us on that end to make anybody feel pressure or some guilt. Oh no, I'm feeding my own suffering. It's just this curiosity. What am I feeding myself? The communication I offer myself internally is also fuel. I'm consuming the voice in my head. And when I notice the voice in my head is being rather judgmental towards myself or someone else, that usually means I need some tending. So it's not about judging the judgmental voice and adding more and more judgment. It's just noticing, like, oh, that voice I'm using internally is a little harsh. Can I soften it? Just like I'm feeling a strong expression of anger, and that is good and healthy. But do I want to push that out onto somebody, or can I process that anger, sit with it? Sometimes it can be very difficult to do. So this practice that we sit with is really building resiliency, building our ability to take care of ourselves, and in turn, take care of others. Just beginning with yourself, your relationship with your own body, your relationship to the sounds happening around you, those communications that are happening beneath the level of the mind and into the level of the heart. Just curious, what does it feel like to be in my body? What is my body sharing with me this morning? we sit and stay, just being with our body, being with the present moment, just contemplating the way that we communicate, the way that our bodies are communicating in this unconscious way. So all of this again is just developing our ability to be resilient, to be able to respond to the moment rather than react. And it takes practice. And sometimes we're reacting internally and imploding, and sometimes it's external. But just really being conscious of how we're communicating with ourselves, how our body is being communicated with by the birds and the grasses and all of the humans around us. So all of this just gives us a greater understanding of who we are. And it's a moment by moment thing. We're constantly changing. Cells are dying and regrowing. Our bodies are changing. Our minds are changing. Our connection is changing. Just getting to know ourselves in the middle of that helps us continue to find that ground of stability. Just like a tree with established roots stands strong no matter what is happening. So we're building that within ourselves. I'll invite you just to consider this one last question as we start to come to a close. Just maybe taking with you this idea of how am I communicating with myself? Is there some gentleness with it? How is my body communicating with me? Can I slow down and really listen deeply beyond words? Also, this curiosity. My question I was going to ask is, how am I nourishing myself? And this tiny wren just came and landed and just started asking a question. And I'm just delighted by, again, the way that nature is always communicating with us. So whether you're hearing the wren and listening into his question, just sitting with that question, how can I nourish myself? Especially when my communication with myself is really difficult, or communication with somebody else is really difficult. So the trees outside allow themselves to be nourished by the burning sun and the torrential rain, and the gentle rain and the warmth of the sun. How am I nourishing myself? I invite you to bring your palms together, hands over heart, any of your closing habits or practices. Just considering again, how am I nourishing myself? You might not have landed on a particular thing. Nourishing yourself can be as simple as, I'm going to give myself a glass of water when I stand up. Nourishing yourself could be setting aside time to read or take a walk in the woods. Just bring that with you into these next days, just as you bring your practice with you. We'll end with a few loving kindness phrases, repeating them back if they make sense for you. May I notice how I'm communicating with myself and others. May I slow down and listen to my body's wisdom. May I remember to nourish myself. And when action is needed, may I consciously choose to move with ease and peace. Take your time, just whenever you feel complete. Open your eyes, find a little movement. As always, just take a moment thanking yourself for showing up. Thank you, Sangha, for being here, supporting each other.